I'm Jenifer, and I've got my old-timey Psaltery here today, and I've got my old-timey costume on, and I've got a lot of songs and stories about someone you may know. Someone who's very special. She has a big heart, and she has a lot of friends, and she has a lot of space, and she's really amazing, you know? A lot of people know about her. I wonder, though, if you know that Texas sings. Well, of course, what I mean by that is that the people of Texas sing. And what I really mean by that is that, well, you sing, don't you? And I sing. Heck, we all sing. People all over the world sing. And we've been singing for a long time, too, about a lot of the same things. You know, like our good times and our bad times and our work and our trials and our loves and our hates. In Texas, we sing the songs that the people have claimed for themselves. Songs that are simple, surgent rhythms. Songs that have that certain something that just goes straight to the heart of the matter. And we've been singing these songs from the early frontier days all the way to the space age days. We've been singing the songs that tell what it means to be a Texan, or a Texian, as we were once called. So these are the songs that Texas sings. Songs that tell about Texas as it used to be in the old days, and as it still is in some ways. Well, I once did know a farmer, a jolly good old soul. I used to do a little work around his country home. He had an only daughter. To win her, I did try. And when I asked the old man for her, this was his reply. Oh, treat my daughter kindly and say you'll do no harm. And when I die, I'll will to you my little house and farm. My horse, my plow, my sheep, my cows, my hogs, and little barn. And all the baby chickens in the garden. Now this is a typical English ballad, and it was sung as a lullaby on the Texas frontier. And it was a very rough frontier, too. You know, gentle and fine things like lullabies were cherished all the more because they were so scarce. Folks who came to the frontier left behind the comforts of home. Those who stayed in the cities and towns of the East, for instance, thought the people who went west of the frontier were just plain crazy. And if some adventurous young man decided to go and try his luck in Texas, he left a note like this, tacked to his door when he closed it for the last time. It was a pretty simple note. As a matter of fact, it only had 3 letters on it. And they look like this. Can you read these? G-T-T, right. You know what it meant? Gone to Texas, right. And in those days, you didn't have to spell that out. Everybody knew what G-T-T meant because it soon became a kind of short expression for the idea that, well, everything was all up with this fella. In effect, he had gone to the dogs, or gone to the devil, gone to Texas to become a Texian. Now, many a young Texian thought the game was worth the candle, and he was willing to do without a clean, comfortable bed and maybe sleep on the ground on an old animal hide. His home, if he had one, well, it was a tent, or maybe a hut with a dirt floor. No furniture, maybe just a crate or two, something like that. And wash day didn't come very often. It was a long time between baths. And this naturally had an effect on courtship. And rumors got around. Rumors about the Texian boys got around to the neighboring states. And Louisiana gals, for instance, well, they heard about the Texians, probably met a few too, and they warned their sisters against courtship with the Texian boys like this. Louisiana gals, come and listen to my noise. Don't go out with the Texian boys. If you do, your ration it'll be Johnny cake and venison and sassafras tea. Johnny cake and venison and sassafras tea. When they go a-courtin', let me tell you what they wear. An old leather coat, all picked and bare. An old straw hat, more brim than crown. A pair of dirty socks they've worn the year round. A pair of dirty socks they've worn the year round. For your wedding supper, there's beef and cornbread. There it is to eat when the ceremony's said. When you go to milk, you'll milk in a gourd. Set it in the corner and cover it with a board. Set it in the corner and cover it with a board. You'll live in a hut with a hewed log wall that ain't got any windows at all, with a clapboard roof and a puncheon floor. And that is the way all Texas soar. That is the way all Texas soar. Now brandy is brandy, any way you mix it. A Texian's a Texian, any way you fix him. When other good folk are home in bed, the devil is a-working in the Texian's head. The devil is a-working in the Texian's head. Well, it was along about the late 1800s, there was a song being written in upstate New York, and it made its way to Texas, where the Texans claimed it for their own. Only instead of singing about the river valley in New York, they changed it. They sang about the river valley that they lived near, the one they loved the best. And this is the way it sounded. From this valley they say you are going. We will miss your bright eyes and your sweet smile. For they say you are taking the sunshine that has brightened our pathways a while. Does this sound familiar to you? Sing along with me on the chorus. Ready? Good. Come and sit by my side if you love me. Do not hasten to bid me adieu, but remember the Red River Valley and the girl who has loved you so true. Neat. Now, you know, I guess no recollection of Texas would be complete for me without remembering one of the key events in Texas history. The one I'm thinking about is the Battle of San Jacinto. You remember that battle, don't you? Right. Did you know there was music played there at the Battle of San Jacinto? Actually, there were two songs played. Both of them were love songs. The first one was like this. It was written by an Irishman. Will you come to the bower I have shaded for you? I have decked it with roses all spangled with dew. Will you come to the bower? Will you pretty sentimental song. Maybe you've wondered, as I have, why do men go to war intending to shoot someone marching to such an ardent love ballad? I don't know the answer to that. But of course, I do know that they did not play their music at the battle on stringed instruments like this. As a matter of fact, at the Battle of San Jacinto that day, General Sam Houston had in his Texian army 4 musicians. Now, 1 was a drummer, and 3 were fifers, a little high, fluty-sounding instrument. And when they played "Will You Come to the Bower," it probably didn't sound so sweet. Tell you what, I'll play the second love song that they played for you there that day at the battlegrounds, and I'll play it in a fife and drum fashion. Now that's different, isn't it? We could probably march to that. And march those fellows did that day, and victorious they were. And the Battle of San Jacinto became one of the 20 most decisive battles in the world. You see, it not only validated the Republic of Texas, but it led to a lot of other states coming into the Union as well. More than doubled the size of the country at that time, and was really, you know, a change for the whole world map. Now, when I stop to think that maybe this important victory might have hinged upon the actions of one beautiful 20-year-old black girl named Emily, I'm astounded. I have to ask myself all over again, is it really possible that the actions of just one young woman could make such a difference to the world map? Maybe so. This woman, Emily, was an indentured servant. Actually, she was a mulatto. Her skin was a light color. Her blood was mixed, part black and part white. So that light, creamy, beautiful color that she was sometimes called high yellow. And she was the indentured servant of a Texas patriot named Colonel James Morgan. And a few days before this historic battle took place, Colonel Morgan was off on Galveston Bay with just a handful of Texian soldiers. He expected Santa Anna and the Mexican army to show up there. Well, it didn't happen that way. Unbeknownst to Colonel Morgan, Santa Anna and the Mexican forces had come around the other way, were about 75 miles to the north, had surrounded Colonel Morgan's very own household, had taken the beautiful Emily Morgan captive, and looted the house of all of its goods. Now, somehow, in the midst of all this ruckus, Emily, who was not only a beautiful woman, but a clever woman as well, and a loyal Texian, she managed, with the help of a young boy, to get a message sent through to General Sam Houston and the bulk of the Texians who were already encamped at the battle site. So that meant that Sam Houston already had advanced knowledge of Santa Anna's position and the fact that he was headed that way. So on the afternoon of April the 20th, 1836, Santa Anna, leading the Mexican army with the beautiful Emily and all the goods he'd gathered, they all arrived at the plains of San Jacinto. Now, it needs to be told here, in case you haven't already guessed, that Santa Anna was a well-known ladies' man. He not only liked beautiful women, but he had fastidious taste. He loved fine furnishings, you know, elegant clothes, things like that. They say that in battle he carried, silk sheets and champagne and crystal goblets and exotic foods and silver serving bowls. He even had a silver potty, they say. And for his headquarters, he carried this octagonal-shaped, carpeted it was, 3-roomed even, red and white, striped marquee or tent. It's not exactly your regular camouflage issued tent, is it? No. So when they arrived at the battle site as the leader of the Mexican army, well, one of Santa Anna's first duties was to choose the campsite for his troops. Now, when he did this, he apparently, well, he made a bad choice. It's written that his men and his officers were very critical of the campsite he chose for them. I guess he just disobeyed all the military rules for how you go about choosing a campsite. But when he chose the campsite for this handsome red and white silk marquee and the beautiful Emily Morgan and himself, well, he must have obeyed all the rules of romance, for he located this marquee on a lovely little rise with a fine view just overlooking San Jacinto Bay. And while he dilly-dallied with Emily Morgan there, he was kept occupied and distracted from the battle at hand. And the Texians were able to pull off their famous surprise attack and become the victors of the day. And Emily Morgan, she became a very celebrated lady. And in fact, we sing about her in this song. There's a yellow rose in Texas that I am going to see. Nobody else could miss her, not half as much as me. She cried so when I left her, it like to broke my heart. And if I ever find her, we never more shall part. I'll bet you know this one, sing along. She's the dearest rose of color that Texas ever knew. And her eyes are bright as diamonds, they sparkle like the dew. You may talk about your dearest May and sing of Rosalie, but the yellow rose of Texas beats the bells of Tennessee. Yeah. Well, of course, the story of the Battle of San Jacinto, of necessity, puts the Mexicans in the role of enemy. And the flip side of the story, and there's always a flip side, puts the Mexicans in the role of friends. And to understand that part of the story, you have to remember that in those early days, Texas wasn't Texas as we know it. No, it was all part of Mexico, right? You knew that. And so that meant there were a lot of native-born Mexicans already here. And among those who were here, many chose to fight against Mexico for freedom. And they fought alongside blacks, Anglos, Frenchmen, Swedish, all kinds of different internationals who were here during that struggle for Texas independence. And when it came time to sign the Texas Declaration of Independence, 3 of the signers were native-born Mexicans. One was Jose Antonio Navarro, one was Jose Francisco Ruiz, and the third gentleman, a distinguished scholar, a world statesman. Sometimes in Texas, he's known as Chicano Numero Uno. His name was Lorenzo de Zavala. And I have a special little Mexican song in celebration of that friendship. So if you know it, sing it with me. It goes like this. Estas son las mañanitas que cantaba el rey David. Hoy por ser día de tu santo te las cantamos a ti. Despierta, mi bien, despierta, mira que ya amaneció, ya los pajarillos cantan, la luna ya se metió. That's a nice one, isn't it? Now, La Luna, or the moon, actually figures in another very special Texas song that people all over the world have claimed for themselves, not just Texans. This particular song was recorded in 1941, and it sold 1.5 million records. And you know, it was really unique. It did something that no other song up until that time had done. What it did was sort of take the country western sounds of rural America and the kind of jazzy, brassy sounds of the cities, put them together in one song. And it became such a popular song that wherever you went in the world, you'd hear people, they weren't Texans, singing this song. If you went to South America or to the Mediterranean or maybe to Germany, you'd find people there loving this song, knowing all the words. And on a particular date in history, the one I'm thinking about was November the 19th, 1969. Think for a minute. where was I? November the 19th, 1969. This particular song was sung before the largest audience ever to be in the history of the world. When Apollo 12 astronauts, Charles Conrad, decided to serenade the world from the moon in all its splendor with this Texas song. I'm sure you know it, so sing along with me together. Deep within my heart lies a melody, a song of old San Antone. When in dreams I live with a memory beneath the stars all alone, it was there I found beside the Alamo enchantment strange as the blue up above, a moonlit pass that only she would know still hears my broken song of love. Moon in all your splendor, know only my heart, bring back my rose, rose of San Antone, lips so sweet and tender, like petals falling apart. Speak once again of my rose, my own. Broken dreams, empty words I know, still live in my heart all alone. Of that moonlit pass by the Alamo, and rose, my rose of San Antone. Rose, my rose of San Antone. Yeah, that of course was the beautiful San Antonio Rose, written by Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys. Did you know that Bob Wills learned to play his music from the blacks? Yeah, he and a lot of other musicians picked up that wonderful characteristic of just singing it and playing it the way they felt it. And I'm lucky enough to have an elderly black neighbor who remembers picking cotton in East Texas when she was a girl. And I'd heard about black work songs, and I asked her, did they pick cotton? Did they sing while they were picking cotton? She said they did. She said it went like this, that when they got out there in the morning to start picking the cotton, that everybody would get going pretty good, and just out of the blue, somebody would sing out a line, and everybody keep picking cotton, you know, and then somebody else would sing back an answer. People would still be picking cotton, and then 2 or 3 people would join in with the first person, and they'd sing another line, and in that way they kind of built a song. And the rhythm of the song got to be the same as the rhythm of the work. Like you would reach for the cotton and pull it off the bush, and put it in the bag, and move down the row, and reach for the cotton, and pull it off the bush, and put it in the bag, and reach for some more. Like jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton, gonna jump down, turn around, pick a bale a day, gonna jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton, gonna jump down, turn around, pick a bale a day. Oh Lordy, pick a bale of cotton. Oh Lordy, pick a bale a day. Oh Lordy, pick a bale of cotton. Oh Lordy, pick a bale a day. Yeah. Well, the cotton got picked, and the songs got sung, and we remember the blacks for their participation in frontier Texas, not only for the music role and the farming role, but they served in the Texas Rangers, as well as struggling for the freedom of Texas, and over 5,000 black cowboys rode the cattle trails. But my very favorite story about a black in frontier Texas is the story of William Goyen. Now, William was a slave who escaped from a South Carolina plantation back in 1821, and he went to East Texas and set himself up in business. He was a landowner and a machine shop runner and even an advisor to Sam Houston, and he lived such an unusually free life for a slave, former slave in frontier Texas, that people remembered his life. And after he passed on, and we celebrated our 100th birthday here in Texas, we remembered William with a monument in Nacogdoches, Texas. You could go there today and see it. It lists all the highlights of his career, and it has a little couplet at the bottom that says, "His skin was black, his heart true blue." Now, that may not be the best piece of poetry you're ever going to hear in your life, but it is about one of the best ideas that you're ever going to hear about. It's about freedom. Oh, freedom, yeah. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me, over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Sing along with me one more time. Oh, freedom, yeah. Oh, freedom, yeah. Oh, freedom over me, over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Yeah, Texas sings. These are only a few of the songs that Texas sings. She claims many songs just as she claims many people and many experiences. She has a heart as big as the state, and yet she's pretty young. So thanks for joining me, Jenifer, that's me, for singing some of these songs with me. And say, keep on listening, will you, for the songs that Texas sings. See you next time. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me, over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me, over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.